Hey guys, welcome back to DIY guitar making at Eric Schaefer Guitars. So a lot of people are endeavoring to build an acoustic guitar for the first time ever, and those people are asking themselves, well, how long is this actually going to take me? Either in cumulative hours or how long as a span of their life. Is it going to take me, a couple months or a year? And of course, the answer is a big it depends. However, I'm not going to leave you guys hanging with a completely ambiguous answer, and I'm really going to explore the factors behind that so someone considering building an acoustic guitar for the first time can determine for themselves how long, given their situation, it's going to take them. So the short answer to this question is 1 year. What do I mean by that? I mean that I have found that the average person takes about a year to finish their first guitar. Of course, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of equipment and tools and things like that that they need to either obtain or build, jigs they need to build and things like that. And then of course there's just life. Life gets in the way, life happens, things happen, and so things always take longer than you expect them to take. So on average, most people take about a year. How do I know this? Well, I get the sense that I have of this because I teach the online course, Building an OM Acoustic. And right now there are 118 students in that course, and I don't know exactly where everyone is. There's a members forum, and so I see a little bit of, our sort of dialogue back and forth. I get sort of a pretty good sense for how far along people are getting and who's finishing the course. The average is 1 year, but the range, I would say, is about 3 months on the extreme low end, the extreme fast end, and 2 years on the extreme other end. People that take longer than 2 years, I think the sense that I get is they tend to move on. They tend to not finish it. If it's taking you that long, then maybe the project is just a little too big. That's not an absolute rule, that's just something that I've noticed. So if you're planning this, you might want to try and keep it condensed down within 2 years, because if you expand it out beyond that, it's very possible that you'll just lose interest in it. So to figure out how long it's going to take you to build your first guitar, there are several questions that you have to ask yourself. One, realistically, how much time are you willing or even able to commit to this on a regular basis? Now that could be as little as, it could be once a month, which is fine. I know there are people that do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's obviously just going to take you longer. You're going to be closer to that 2-year mark than certainly you won't be able to get it done in 3 months. Now you have to be very realistic about how much time you're really going to spend on it. Is this something you plan on doing for a career, or is this just a hobby? Is this a one-time thing, or are you going to be making guitars after that as well? So that all plays into sort of your commitment to the idea of guitar building as a whole, and how much you are actually going to stick with it on a regular basis. Now, most people, I think, are weekend warriors with guitar building, at least for their first guitar, but often even just with guitar building going forward as a whole, they stay in this weekend warrior mentality of working on it once or twice a week. So that would be, Saturday and Sunday, the weekend, is when they have time to work on guitar building. These weekend warriors are, I think, the average. So these are the people that will get it done in about a year. Now, some people are retired or they've quit their job and now they're doing this full time. Of course, their first guitar can be done a lot quicker because they can work on it every day, and they're motivated to work on it every day because they don't have these other commitments that are a strain on their time and mental energy. So like I said, I've heard of and seen a couple people in the course who have gotten their guitar done in about 3 months, which for a first guitar is really, really, really fast. I think even if this is all you're working on, to get your first guitar done in 3 months is very impressive. That's not to say that guitars take 3 months to build. We're talking about your first guitar. So there's a lot more that goes into the first guitar than that would go into subsequent guitars, where you already have this foundation of experience from the first one, and you already have the jigs and tools and equipment. You don't have to research every single step, although you're always learning. You just don't have to fall back on, into research mode every single step. Another factor to consider is your experience. So how much experience do you have in woodworking? Maybe you even have a little bit of experience in instrument building. Maybe you've built a kit ukulele or something like that, or an electric guitar, and this is just your first acoustic guitar. So that's going to help you. That's definitely going to take the edge off of the learning curve, and probably take a little bit of the edge off of the tool buying and equipment build-up curve, because both of those things you need for this job. You need to learn some things, and you need to establish a base of tools. So what I've noticed is probably about half of the people who either take my hands-on course or the online course, about half of them come in with no experience whatsoever. So they haven't built a different type of instrument, and they don't even have any sort of woodworking experience, like building furniture or cabinetry or anything like that. So they come in completely green. And still, most of them fall into that 1 year category. There's actually a certain advantage to coming in completely green, because you don't have preconceived notions or things that you learned from, say, furniture making that don't apply and even mislead in instrument building. So the next thing I want to talk about, which I've already alluded to a little bit, is how outfitted is your workshop environment? How much equipment do you have? What tools do you already have? Again, if the answer is none, that is going to add a considerable amount of time to your getting this project finished, obviously, because you have to gather some essential tools. There aren't too many essential tools, but then there's a lot of sort of peripheral tools that definitely help you get the job done quicker and more accurately. So if you're already coming from a woodworking background, you're in the advantage here, because you likely already have things like a bandsaw, table saw, and a decent collection of hand tools, chisels, planes, things like that. Now, of course, there's lutherie specific tools that you're going to need to invest in, but you definitely have the foundation down if you already have some sort of woodworking shop. Keep in mind that you don't have to buy as many tools as you think, especially if you live in near a major metropolitan area. There's bound to be some sort of makerspace or a wood shop or something like that that has sort of like a gym membership model, where you pay a monthly fee and you go in and you use their equipment. Especially with large equipment like drum sanders and bandsaws and things like that. That's great, because especially if you're just building one guitar, you really don't need to buy large, heavy equipment that's going to be expensive. If you're just building one, I would really recommend getting in touch with Makerspace or something like that and using their equipment on a hourly rental basis. So some of you might be thinking that a more helpful view of this would be, how many cumulative hours am I going to put into this? Then you can, if you can figure out how many hours total that is going into this, you can look at your calendar, figure out the gaps in the free time that you have in your calendar, and figure out then how long it's going to take you, whether it's going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years. The thing about figuring out the cumulative hours is it's very hard to accurately say how many hours one would put into a guitar because there's so many different factors in an acoustic guitar that if you leave out or add one of these factors, it's going to either diminish or add to the number of hours it's going to take you significantly. For example, binding and purfling. You can build an acoustic guitar without any binding and purfling. It's a lot easier because that step is difficult, and it certainly shaves down on the hours and some of the equipment you need to buy. Now also, if you're doing inlays can add days to the project. I did this new guitar here has a cutaway. The cutaway even adds about 2 days to my process, and my process is very refined. So for someone who hasn't done it before, it could add weeks of solid work just on the cutaway portion of the guitar. I would estimate that the range for the number of hours that people spend cumulatively on their first guitar is anywhere from 80 hours to 500 hours. And you might be thinking, whoa, like that range is ridiculous. And really it's just because there are so many factors that can go into that. Things like, what type of guitar you're building, whether or not you're going to do certain things like binding and the cutaway, and different styles of finish and inlay work and things like that. These factors can dramatically increase the time. In fact, let's say, for example, you did pearl. You wanted to do this pearl purfling where you have to cut these individual segments of pearl and assemble them in a pattern all the way around the perimeter of the top. That alone, doing that type of work, if you did that on the top and the fretboard, you could double the time you spent on that guitar just from that simple decision. So that's why I say anywhere from 80 to 500 hours, and then of course your own experience has to be factored into that. So I wouldn't take the extreme position of either of those. I wouldn't seriously consider that you're going to be the 80 hours guy or the 500 hours guy. You're probably somewhere safely in the middle. You might spend 200 hours on your first guitar if you are an average person with an average ambition for this project. So with that in mind, what I do for long-term projects where the amount of time that's going to take me is somewhat uncertain is I will sit down and estimate the time as best as I can, times it by 10, and then however far out that puts that time, I put that on the calendar. So say, for example, if you're estimating that by looking at all the steps in guitar building, if you look at that and you say, you know what, this looks to me like it'll take me 2 months. Times that by 10, it might not take you that long, but times it by 10, which will give you 20 months, and then look at your calendar, 20 months from now, put that on the calendar as your drop-dead deadline finish date. It's always useful to have a deadline for anything, any project in life that you care about. Give it a deadline. If it's not important enough to have a deadline, then maybe it's not even worth doing, honestly. You give the project a deadline, and then you push that deadline so far out that you're not going to be overly stressed about it. When I don't put something on the calendar, it's very likely that it won't get done in the long term. To summarize, on average, people take about 1 year to build their first acoustic guitar, and the range that I see is from about 3 months on the extreme fast end and 2 years on the longer end. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video every Friday. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com. or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.